We're going to stay on all the action here in Congress. For that, let's bring in Republican Congressman Dusty Johnson from South Dakota. Congressman, thank you for hustling to a camera for us. We appreciate it. Just before the break, we were talking with one of your Democratic colleagues about the dangers that he sees in this bill. Certainly, that's what we're hearing from the top Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries, as well, who viewers see on their screen there for nearing hour 8 of his remarks there on the floor. When you vote for this, what in your mind are you voting for? What are the selling points for Republicans?
First off, I would say about Leader Jeffries' speech, even in the era of misinformation, it is really over the top. I mean, he's telling these compelling stories of real Americans who are going to lose their food benefits or their health care. The reality is that almost none of those folks would actually be impacted by this bill. There are broad work exceptions in the work requirements. So if you're disabled or if you're a senior, if you're a pregnant woman, if you've got young children at home, if you live in an area with high unemployment, I mean, all of these examples he's giving actually show why the Republican bill has been crafted in such a way, I think, with some empathy. If you're young, if you can work, you should work. But obviously, real life can deal some people some tough hands, and we want to have empathy, and this bill does.
But then where are the estimates coming from when the Congressional Budget Office is looking at the fact that millions of people will be without Medicaid because of things like work requirements? You look at states like Kentucky, for example, in 2018 that included their own work requirements program to Medicaid, and they saw a decrease in Medicaid enrollment in large part because it just added so much red tape and people weren't able to get what they needed. I'm sure you guys have accounted for that, right?
Oh, of course we have. A lot of that.
How?
So many of the folks who are no longer counted. Remember, we've had work requirements for 30 years, and they've been bipartisan. And they have proven to work, particularly in SNAP and in TANF. And when you hear these stories about all these people who won't be on the programs, you know the number one leading cause of why people aren't on those programs after work requirements are put into place? Because they get a job and they start to earn enough money that their revenues exceed the limitations of the program. Like, that's not a failure. That's actually an American success. That is people escaping poverty. And I get it. We're in an era where everybody wants to throw these partisan haymakers. But having people escape poverty, that should actually be the goal.
So you have no concerns about what's in this bill?
Well, I know that you look at something like food stamps, SNAP, that program, states have a bucket of exemptions where even if somebody doesn't qualify for one of our exceptions, but they're a unique case, they can still, as a part of their caseload, exempt them from the work requirements. That shows how much more nuanced and frankly apathetic these policies are than Leader Jeffries has been saying. So, no, I don't want to say that I don't have any concerns. There is no such thing as a perfect bill. But I would tell you the fear-mongering has really been over the top. And we heard the same sort of thing 30 and 40 years ago when work requirements were put into place on TANF and on food stamps. The amazing thing is, every single time we have a farm bill, overwhelmingly, Democrats and Republicans together continue those work requirements. And in the Fiscal Responsibility Act just 2 years ago, we came together in a bipartisan way and enhanced those work requirements. It's kind of amazing, maybe, that those work requirements the Democrats voted for weren't evil, but these are.
I think the conversation that I've had a lot recently is with governors who are worried about the ways that the funding mechanisms for federal money on programs ranging from the way that rural hospitals are supported to Medicaid to SNAP and other programs, that it leaves them in the lurch of having to come up with dollars that they just don't have. You yourself are someone who hopes to aspire to be a governor. Have you thought that piece of it through?
Oh, okay, if the states don't think they have money, our federal government is $37 trillion in debt. It's not like we're rolling in it over here.
Yes,
Here's
but the
reality.
deficit concerns are part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And those deficit concerns are legitimate concerns. It's not quite as bad as CBO says. But, yeah, if people want to have a conversation about deficit impacts, that's a legitimate conversation to have. Responsible people can have that conversation rather than the kind of fear-mongering that Leader Jeffries is engaged in. I would say this on the state cost share. Look at food stamps or SNAP. South Dakota's error rate is a little over 2%. You have states that have error rates 5, 6, 7 times that. And they have been allowed to do that because, it's just federal money. The states don't have any skin in the game. They do a terrible job of managing that program. And so what we wanted to do is have states with a little bit of skin in the game so that they run those programs better. If governors are concerned about having incentives to run their programs better, I don't know what to tell them. One more thing. These state-directed payments. These are scams that states have been using to bilk the federal government. They allow Medicaid not to pay at the Medicaid rate in most states, or the higher Medicare rate, or the higher commercial rate. They let Medicaid charge 300% of the commercial rate so they can bilk the federal government for all that money. It is a scam. There are states like South Dakota that are not playing that game, and somehow we still have hospitals that are caring for our people. Other states can get it done, too.
I appreciate you sort of living in the policy weeds with me on this, because I do think a lot of our viewers are aware of the things that Jeffries is saying, and they'd like to hear the other side of at least what Republicans see in this bill. So I appreciate that. But I also know from being on the Hill that you are often in these negotiation rooms. You were at the White House yesterday meeting with the president. The bill didn't fundamentally change. You guys accepted the Senate changes and the Senate bill itself. So what ultimately made these holdouts change their minds and get to yes?
I think it was a little something different for everybody, right? But with some of the swing seat members, some people would call them moderates, who were concerned about the Medicaid impacts you and I have been talking about, the real breakthrough there was them understanding this $50 billion transportation fund, transformation fund, that will be used to address some of the pinches and problems that could be caused with these state-directed payment reforms that you and I were just talking about. Once people understood how powerful that fund could be, most of their concerns were alleviated. On the Freedom Caucus side, I think they heard from President Trump over and over again how much good was in this bill and how they should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Congressman Dusty Johnson, we appreciate you hustling to a camera and getting on to talk about this bill with us. Thank you.